Good morning, dear students. Welcome to Diksha Online. Today we are going to discuss the synopsis and few problems on solutions and solid state. First, we'll take solutions. Solutions, they can be different types. So first we are taking solution of gases in liquids. So solubility of a gas in a liquid depends on nature of the gas and solvent, temperature and pressure. The Henry's law will tell us the solubility of gases with respect to pressure. So the variation of solubility of gases in liquids with pressure is given by Henry's law. According to Henry's law, the solubility of a gas in a liquid is directly proportional to the partial pressure of the gas above the liquid at a given temperature. So whatever the gaseous mixture we are taking, if I want to dissolve that particular gas in the liquid, the solubility of the gas is always proportional to the partial pressure of the same gas above the liquid surface. So I can consolidate Na plus Na plus Nb, that is mole fraction of the gas is directly proportional to P. So if I take for gases in liquids, the number of moles of liquid will be too large compared to number of moles of the gas that is being dissolved. So I can neglect the number of moles of gas in the denominator. I can say Na by Nb, a proportionality constant called as Kh is going to be called as Henry's constant. So I can put Kh on the right side as well as left side. So it can be dependent on the units. So if Kh is given as per atmosphere, then it will be along with the peak part, that is right side in the equation. If the Kh unit is given as atmosphere, then it will come with the mole ratio. So Henry's constant can have both the units. So depending upon the unit, you have to decide the position of the Kh in solving the problem. The default assumption is the second equation. So Kh is always inversely proportional to solubility of the gas. Limitations of Henry's law. The Henry's law is limited. We cannot apply if the pressure of the gas is very high, or even the gas whatever we are taking should not react with the solvent. So if ammonia gas and HCl if I take, they will react with water, so they are extensively soluble. So Henry's law of gas solubility is not applicable for solution of ammonia in water or solution of HCl in water. Liquid mixtures. So when we mix two liquids, there are three possibilities. One, the liquid can be completely miscible with each other in all proportions. Whatever amount of liquid A add to liquid B, they will be one phase formed. Partially miscible liquids. So to some extent, both the liquids are soluble in each other. After that, they separate into two distinct layers, and the two layers are basically saturated solution of one in the other. They are partially miscible liquids and completely immiscible liquids. Even one drop of the liquid will not be miscible with the other. That is called as completely immiscible liquids. So three different cases. In this chapter, we are concentrating mainly on the first type, that is completely miscible liquids. So we have Raoult's law for binary liquid solution. So the vapor pressure of the volatile component is directly proportional to the mole fraction of the volatile component in the liquid state. So if I take binary solution of A and B, Pa is partial pressure of vapor pressure of A. So Pa is equal to P naught A XA. P naught A is the mole vapor pressure of pure component A. XA is the mole fraction in the liquid state. Pb is equal to P naught B XB. So P total vapor pressure of the solution is equal to P naught A XA plus P naught B XB. These are the main important formulae in Raoult's law. Ideal solutions. So ideal solutions are the solutions which obey Raoult's law in all composition. So P naught A XA plus P naught B XB is equal to P total. That should be satisfied at all composition of X and Y, or A and B. And for ideal solution, delta H mixing is 0, delta V mixing is 0. Delta H mixing 0 means the enthalpy change during mixing will be 0. That means neither heat should be absorbed nor heat should be liberated when we mix two liquids. Same way the volume change in the mixing will be 0. If I mix exactly 10 ml of one liquid and 10 ml of other liquid, I should get exactly 20 ml of the mixture. And for ideal solution, the intermolecular forces between AA, BB will be same as AB. There is no difference between intermolecular forces in pure components and the mixture. So the example nearly ideal solution is benzene and toluene. So benzene and toluene have same intermolecular forces with respect to each other. So benzene interaction is same as toluene is almost same as benzene toluene. So they form almost an ideal solution. Non-ideal solutions are solutions which do not obey Rolle's law at all composition. And for non-ideal solution, delta H mixing and delta V mixing will not be equal to 0. There are two types of non-ideal solution, one with positive deviation. So for positive deviation, delta H mixing is greater than 0, delta V mixing is greater than 0. Means there is enthalpy change will be positive, means it is an endothermic process, and delta V mixing is 0, more than 0 means if I mix 10 ml of one liquid and 10 ml of other liquid, I will get more than 20 ml of the mixture. So P total is always greater than P naught A XA and P naught B XP. The intermolecular forces between A and B is weaker compared to that of AA and BB. So example is water and ethanol, CCl4 and chloroform. Non-ideal solution with negative deviation. In case of negative deviation, delta H mixing is less than 0, delta V mixing is less than 0, means the process of mixing is exothermic, and if you mix 10 ml of each of the two liquids, I will get less than 20 ml. So P total is always less than P naught A XA plus P naught B XB. And here the intermolecular force of A and B is stronger compared to AA and BB. So example is acetone and aniline, methanol and even glacial acetic acid. Even water and concentrated acids can become negative deviation. The graphical representation of ideal solutions. So what we saw here, this is XA equal to 1 and XB equals 0. This XA equals 0, XB equals to 1. So this is P naught B, this is P naught A. So if I go with mole fraction of A changing from 1 to 0, the curve goes on decreasing like this, a straight line, and finally meets 0. For P naught B, so if a mole fraction of B is 1, it is P naught B. If mole fraction of B changes from 1 to 0, the curve for B also goes on decreasing. So the straight line we can see is an ideal solution. The total vapor pressure at any point of time, any given composition, will be the straight line joining P naught A and P naught B. So this is the ideal solution. So similar graphs are expected for non-ideal solution with a deviation. So if I take non-ideal solution, so first one is negative deviation. You can say dotted line are the expected ideal behavior. So they are below the ideal behavior. That's why it is called as negative deviation. Positive deviation, the curves are above the ideal behavior. So you can see P naught total vapor pressure is always less than P naught A plus P naught B, P naught A XA plus P naught A XB, and in a positive deviation always the total vapor pressure is more than P naught A XA plus P naught B XB. Fractional distillation of ideal solution. In case of ideal solution, the graph, if I plot only the line joining P naught A and P naught B, so this is the boiling point of benzene, this is the boiling point of toluene, 110 degree, 80 degree. So the upper curve represents the vapor composition, the lower curve represents the liquid composition. So if I take some composition here, if you boil, it starts rising the temperature. When it reaches this point, it starts boiling. The corresponding vapor will have the composition given by that. So vapor will be richer in more volatile component. When you condense it, you get back this liquid, and liquid is again boiling at lower temperature. This is the vapor composition, and when you condense, you get liquid over here. and like that if I continue further, I'll get ultimately pure benzene. If I go on removing benzene, more of benzene in vapor phase, the liquid residue will move towards the toluene. So from liquid residue I can get toluene, and from vapor I can get benzene. So both the liquids can be separated by fractional distillation. If I take distillation of non-ideal solution, so any graph you start with, any composition, suppose I start for the left one, that is positive deviation, vapor pressure will be more and boiling point will be less. So the right side is for positive deviation, this is for negative deviation. Negative deviation, vapor pressure will be low and boiling point will be high. So in all the cases, the pink curve represents vapor, the blue one will represent the liquid. So suppose I take any composition here. So when you heat, that boils like this. At this temperature it starts boiling. Then the vapor will have this composition, condense it, I get this liquid. If again vapors are condensed, I get one more liquid composition richer in more volatile component. Ultimately I can get only the point whatever is mentioned here, that is called as azeotrope. So in case of ethanol and water, you have positive deviation, and the 95.5% of ethanol and 4.5% of water, this will form azeotropes. Same way here, if I start, this is the boiling liquid, vapor will lead to pure component, the liquid residue will lead to the azeotropic composition. So in positive deviation, vapor will lead to azeotrope, liquid leads to pure components. In negative deviation, liquid will lead to azeotrope and vapors will lead to pure components. But we cannot get both the liquids in pure form starting from one composition. That is fractional distillation in case of non-ideal solution. Moving to colligative properties. Colligative properties are the properties of dilute solutions which depends only on the number of particles of solute but not on its nature. So there are four colligative properties: relative lowering of vapor pressure, osmotic pressure, elevation in boiling point, and depression in freezing point. Relative lowering of vapor pressure. So when a non-volatile solute is dissolved in a solvent, the vapor pressure of solution always decreases. The ratio of lowering of vapor pressure to the vapor pressure of pure solvent is known as relative lowering of vapor pressure, that is P naught minus Ps by P naught is called as relative lowering of vapor pressure. It is given by RLVP. So if I take the Raoult's law for RLVP, the relative lowering of vapor pressure of a solution is equal to mole fraction of the solute. So P naught by P naught minus Ps. Okay, it is reversed actually, I think. So here it is, should be P naught minus Ps by P naught is equal to Na by Na plus Nb. And here also for dilute solution, Nb can in one of mole fraction of solute can be neglected in denominator. So Na can be neglected. So P naught minus Ps by P naught is equal to Na by Nb. This is the formula for relative lowering of vapor pressure according to Raoult's law. Okay. Same way, so here also it is reversed. So this also should be reversed. So P naught minus Ps by P naught. If I take Na by Nb as Wa by Ma, Wp by Mb. So if I take the molecular mass Ma solute is equal to Wa by Wb into P naught by P naught minus Ps into 1000. So the colligative property P naught minus Ps by P naught is always inversely proportional to molecular mass. So in both the cases the ratio is to be inverted. Okay. Next one, osmosis and osmotic pressure. So osmosis is a process of movement of solvent from a region of lower concentration of solute to higher concentration of solute through a semi-permeable membrane. And osmotic pressure is the minimum pressure which must be applied on the solution to prevent the movement of solvent from the solvent side to solution side through the semi-permeable membrane. That is meaning of osmotic pressure. Reverse osmosis. If the pressure applied on the solution is more than the osmotic pressure of the given solution, then what happens? A reverse movement will happen. The solvent will start moving from region of higher concentration to lower concentration of solute through the semi-permeable membrane. So this reverse osmosis concept is used in water purifiers, RO systems. We have desalination of water, converting the seawater into potable water will be done by using reverse osmosis. Laws of osmotic pressure. So according to the laws, the law of osmotic pressure of solution is directly proportional to molar concentration of solution at constant pressure. This is called as Van 't Hoff-Boyle's law. So pi proportional to C at constant temperature. Since C is inversely proportional to volume, I can say P is inversely proportional to volume. So it is similar to Boyle's law, so it is called as Van 't Hoff-Boyle's law. The osmotic pressure is directly proportional to absolute temperature of the given concentration. If C is constant, then pi is proportional to T. So similar to Charles' law, it is called as Van 't Hoff-Charles law. So if you take combining both, combined solution equation similar to combined gas equation, pi is equal to C, pi proportional to C and T. So pi proportional to pi equal to CRT. So R is known as solution constant that has the same value as that of gas constant, that is 8.314 joule per Kelvin per mole and 0.0821 liter atmosphere per Kelvin per mole. Isotonic, hypotonic and hypertonic solutions. If two solutions are said to be isotonic, then osmotic pressure and molar concentration should be same. Then they are known as isotonic solution. If I say a solution is hypotonic, then it's going to be having lesser osmotic pressure than the reference solution, that is hypotonic solution. Then hypertonic means a solution which have a higher osmotic pressure than the reference solution is called as hypertonic solution. So hypertonic means the one which is having higher osmotic pressure is called as hypertonic. The one which is having lower osmotic pressure is called as hypotonic with respect to each other. Using osmotic pressure, how to find the molecular mass? So we know pi is equal to CRT. So C is nothing but number of moles by volume, so N by VRT. N is WA by MA, so WA by MA by VRT. So simplify, MA becomes equal to WRT WART into 1000 by pi into V. Here also we can see molecular mass is inversely proportional to osmotic pressure. Elevation in boiling point. So when a non-volatile solute is added to a solvent, the boiling point of solution is elevated. The difference in the boiling point of solution to that of solvent is called as elevation boiling point, and the phenomena is also known as ebullioscopy. So determination of molecular mass using ebullioscopy. So we have delta TB is proportional to M. M is here molality. So delta TB proportional to M, and the constant of proportionality is given by Kb. Kb is called as molar elevation constant or ebullioscopic constant. Ebullioscopic constant. So Kb, if I say molality is number of moles of solute by mass of solvent in kg. So Wa by Ma is number of moles, Wb is mass of solvent, and 1000 to convert into kg. So delta Tb is equal to Kb into Wa by Ma by Wb into 1000, or Ma is equal to, we can see MA is inversely proportional to delta TB. And KB is given by one more equation, RT naught square by 1000 LV. T naught here is boiling point of the liquid, LV is called as latent heat of vaporization, and R is gas constant. Depression in freezing point in the same way. When a non-volatile solute is added to a solvent, the freezing point of the solution is decreased. Difference in freezing point of solution to that of solvent is called as depression in freezing point, and the phenomenon is also known as cryoscopy. Very similar to ebullioscopy. Same formulae. So here it is called as cryoscopic constant, molar depression constant is given by Kf. So delta Tf is equal to Kf into m, and delta Tf is Kf into molality Wa by Ma over Wb into 1000, and I can calculate molecular mass from the same expression. So here also Kf is equal to RT naught squared by 1000 into Lf. T naught here freezing point of the liquid, and Lf is latent heat of fusion. Abnormal colligative properties. So abnormal colligative properties are the properties obtained in solution because of the solute has undergone either dissociation or association in solution. So far whatever we discussed, we didn't consider any solute getting dissociated or associated, but if the solute is undergoing association or dissociation, then the number of particles in solution will change, the value of colligative property will also change, because colligative property value depends only on the number of particles, not on its nature. So to account for abnormal colligative properties, we have what is called as Van't Hoff factor. So Van't Hoff factor is denoted by I. So I is equal to observed value of colligative property by theoretical value of colligative property, or total number of particles after dissociation or association by normal number of particles. Since value of colligative property is inversely proportional to molecular mass, so it will be ratio of theoretical molecular mass by observed molecular mass. In the experiment, observed molecular mass will be different, will not get the molecular mass same as predicted by the molecular formula. That means it is undergoing either dissociation or association. So these are the three different formula to find out Van't Hoff factor. So from Van't Hoff factor we can find out degree of dissociation or association. So degree of dissociation is given by alpha is equal to I minus 1 by n minus 1, where n is the number of particles formed after dissociation. So if I take NaCl, NaCl becomes Na plus Cl minus. So n is equal to 2 number of ions produced by one particle, that is n. So degree of association is given by same 1 minus I by 1 minus 1 by n. If you simplify, I get alpha as n into 1 minus I by n minus 1. Here n is the number of molecules getting associated. So for dimerization, n is equal to 2, and trimerization n is equal to 3. And polymerization means n will be very large number. Moving to solid state. The solid state, as you know, there are two types of solids, crystalline solids and amorphous solids. So the difference between crystalline and amorphous solids: crystalline solids have a definite three-dimensional arrangement of component particles in 3D space. And amorphous solids, they have only short range orderly arrangement. They do not possess a definite 3D pattern of component particle in 3D space. Then crystalline compounds possess a sharp melting point. So however, any number of times you melt it and cool it, again remelt it, it melts at the same temperature. And in case of amorphous, they have the range of melting points. If I take a substance, melt it, it melts at say some temperature, say 500 degrees Celsius, and again you cool it, again it becomes solid, again you melt it, it will not melt at 500, it may melt at 480, 495 or 502, 503, like that. There is a range of melting point in which the solid can melt. Then crystalline solids are known to be anisotropic in nature, and amorphous are going to be isotropic in nature. Anisotropy means the various values of physical properties are different when measured from different direction. That is a property of crystalline substances. In amorphous, they are going to be isotropic. Whichever direction we measure is going to be same. So in crystalline substances, there is a concept called as space lattice and unit cell. The crystal lattice or space lattice is a regular three-dimensional arrangement of particles in three-dimensional space. So the regular pattern of arrangement is called as crystal lattice. And a definite arrangement of particles in 3D space having minimum number of particles in the arrangement, and this arrangement when you repeat in 3 dimension to get entire space lattice is called as unit cell. So unit cell is the smallest part of the crystal lattice, which when repeat in 3 dimension you get the entire lattice structure. It is just like a brick in a wall. So based on the basic parameters of unit cell. So before that we go for crystallographic axis. So if I take crystallographic axis, it's also same as the normal axis x, y, z. This is a x, this is a y, and this is a z. So here x, y, z are three axes. The only thing is these are maybe perpendicular to each other or may not be perpendicular to each other. So angle, there are three angles here. So angle opposite to x axis, that is between y and z, is A, between z and x is B, between y and x is C. Sorry, alpha, beta and gamma. These are three angles. The lattice points will be there in the crystal lattice. So the unit distance along x is called as A, unit distance along y is called as B, unit distance along z is called as C. So there are 6 basic parameters, 3 unit lengths and 3 angles. So based on these 6 parameters, we have around 7 crystal system in nature. So in space, there are 3 axes coinciding with the edges of the lattice, which may or may not be perpendicular to each other, known as crystallographic axis. Each unit cell is characterized by 3 unit lengths and 3 angles. So based on this, we have total 7 crystal system, and each of these crystal system can exist 4 possible lattice arrangements. One is called as simple or called as primitive, then face centered, body centered, end center or base centered. These are the 4 possibilities. So 7 into 4, 28 possible theoretically lattice arrangements, but in nature we have only 14 existing, and these 14 are called as Bravais lattice. So 7 crystal system and 14 lattice types. So if I take the parameters of different system, we have triclinic, monoclinic, orthorhombic, tetragonal, cubic, trigonal and hexagonal. So I can see number of Bravais lattice, and these are the lattice which can exist. So triclinic exists only in primitive, monoclinic exists in primitive and base centered or end centered. Orthorhombic is the only crystal system which exists in all 4. Tetragonal exists in primitive and body centered. Cubic exists in 3, that is cube face centered, body centered and simple or primitive. And trigonal and hexagonal only 1, that is only primitive, no other lattice are known. So the parameters also is given, is going to be important. So cubic, alpha, beta, gamma equal to 90, A1, A2 is equal to A3, all 3 side lengths are also same. In case of tetragonal, the trigonal, you have A1, A2, A3, alpha, beta, gamma all are equal but not equal to 90 degrees. Hexagonal, A1, A2 are equal, A3 is not equal, third length is different, alpha, beta equal to 90 and gamma equals 120. And triclinic is the most unsymmetrical one, none of the sides are equal, none of the angles are equal. Monoclinic, 2 angles are same, 1 angle is different, all the side length are different. Orthorhombic, all the 3 angles are 90 degree and all 3 side lengths are not equal. Tetragonal, still all 3 angles are 90, but 2 angles, 2 side length are same, one length is different. So this is the 7 system. You need to memorize the alpha, beta, gamma values and ABC values, and which system, which lattice type do they have. Cubic system, the lattice types, we have simple cubic, that is primitive. We can see particles only at the corners, and body centered. Along with the particles at the corners, I have one particle at the body center, and in FCC, face centered cubic, you have the corner particle. Along with that, each face has one face center particle, that is going to be 6 face center particle. So these are 3 lattice types in cubic system. Calculation of number of particles per unit cell. When a particle is present at the corner position, it contributes 1/8 to the each unit cell. When the particle is at the face center, it contributes half to the each unit cell. And when a particle at the body center, it contributes 1 to the unit cell. And particle at the edge center will contribute 1/4 to the unit cell. So these are the relative contribution made by particle in each unit cell. So based on that, we have simple cubic, only corner, so 8 into 1/8 is equal to 1. So number of particles also 1. Body centered cubic, you have corner and also body center. Body center will contribute 1. So effective 1 particle at all corners. So total number of particles is 2. Face centered cubic, corner will be 8 into 1/8. There is no body center, 0. Each of the face center particle will contribute 2 each, half each. 6 into half is equal to 3. 3 plus 1 is equal to 4. The relation between edge length and size of the particle. If I take simple cubic, in case of simple cubic, what happens? Your particles only at the corners. So this edge length is A, and edge length of A is equal to 2r. So it is going to be like this. It's one face will be like this. This is the face of the cubic unit cell. So A will be equal to 2r for simple cubic. Face centered cubic. So if I take face centered cubic, this is the face. So this is the particle 1, 2, 3, 4. They are not in contact along edge length, they are contact along the face center. So face center, you have, this is A, this is A. So face, this Pythagoras theorem, if you apply, this will be root 2a. So root 2a is equal to 4r, or a is equal to 4r by root 2. Okay, that is for FCC. BCC, they are in contact along body diagonal. If I take this as the body diagonal, one particle here, one particle here, and a particle is going to be here. So this is 4r again. 4r is equal to root 3a, or a is equal to 4r by root 3. That is how we can determine the relation between edge length and size of the particles. Packing fraction. Packing fraction is the fraction of the volume occupied by the particles in 3D space. It is given by volume of all the particles in the unit cell by total volume of the unit cell. So if I calculate for simple cubic, body centered cubic and face centered cubic, we'll get like this. In simple cubic, number of particles is 8 into 1/8 is 1. So volume of the particle is 4/3 pi r cube, and total volume of the unit cell is a cube. A cube is nothing but 2r whole cube. If you simplify, I'll get 52% or 0.52 as the fraction. Packing fraction is 0.52, percentage occupancy is 52%. So 48% is void spaces. In case of FCC, what happens? A is nothing but 4r by root 2 and 4 particles. So packing fraction is equal to 4 into 4/3 pi r cube, and a cube I can substitute 4r by root 2 whole cube. Simplify that, you get the packing fraction as 0.74. 74% occupied. In case of BCC, same way if you calculate number of particles is 2, A is 4R by root 3. So packing fraction is, it should be 2 into 4 by 3 pi r cube divided by A cube. This should be 2 not 4. 2 into 4 by 3 pi r cube, and if you simplify you get 0.679 or 0.68. So 68% occupied. So you need to remember the packing fraction for all the 3 unit cells. Density of crystals. Density of crystal is given by total mass of the particles by volume of the unit cell. So m by v basically. So m is nothing but number of particles into mass of each particle. So number of particle is z, depending upon whether it is simple cubic or body centered cubic or whatever, we get the z value. M is atomic mass or molecular mass of the particle, and since it is only one atom, it is not the molar mass. So molar mass we are taking, so divided by Na, number of the Avogadro number. So when you divide m by Na is mass of one particle, and A cube is the volume of the cube, that is a unit cell. So unit edge length. So cubic system only we are taking, so it is A cube. So density is given by Z into m into Na by A cube. Coordination number. So coordination number of crystal is the number of nearest neighboring particles around a given particle. For simple cubic it is going to be 6, for body centered cubic it is going to be 8, and face centered or cubic close packing it will be equal to 12. Types of voids. So as we know, the close packing of particles is happening in solid state, but still there are some void spaces left over, and these voids are of different types. So we have trigonal void, we have tetrahedral void, octahedral void, and cubical void. What is the radius ratio? So relation between radius of particle, radius of void. So for trigonal void it is 0.155 into r particle. So radius of void is 0.11155 times of radius of the particle. For tetrahedral it is 0.225 times the radius of the particle. For octahedral void it is 0.414 times of the particle radius, and for cubical void it is 0.732 times the radius of the particle. Hexagonal close packing. So hexagonal close packing is represented by AB, AB, AB. That means A, B, then again A. So first layer and third layer will have similar arrangement of atoms. The coordination number of the particle will be 12, and packing fraction is going to be 74 or percent, or 0.74 is the packing fraction. Same way we have one more cubic close packing. It is nothing but FCC. It is represented by ABC, ABC, ABC. Means 3 layers are different. The 4th layer and the first layer will have same arrangement. It is same as FCC lattice. FCC lattice means coordination number is 12, and packing fraction also going to be 0.74 or 74%. Radius ratio in ionic crystal. So in ionic crystal we have cations and anions arranged in 3-dimensional pattern and held together through strong electrostatic force of attraction. The general thing is all cations are lost by formed by loss of electron, and anions are formed by gain of electron. Hence the cations are generally smaller compared to anions. So we define the radius ratio as radius of cation to radius of anion. So radius of cation is generally less when compared to radius of anion in most of the ionic compounds, and radius ratio is ratio of radius of cation to radius of anion is known as radius ratio. Generally in most of the crystal solids, the anion will form the basic lattice and cation will occupy the void spaces. Because cation being smaller, it can be accommodated in void spaces. The radius ratio and coordination number. If the radius ratio of cation and anion is less than 0.155, the coordination number should be 2, and thus type of void should be linear. So linear packing should happen. It's very uncommon. So we don't have any example over there. 0.155 to 0.225, the coordination number becomes 3. That means trigonal void. So in place of trigonal arrangement of 3 particles, the small space we can accommodate the cation. So trigonal planar, the example is B2O3. And 0.225 to 0.414, the coordination number of the particle become 4. Tetrahedral void, the cations are accommodated. So zinc sulfide is the best example for zinc ions in tetrahedral voids and sulfide ion forming the basic lattice arrangement. Then 0.414 to 0.732, the octahedral voids are there, and sodium chloride is the best example for this category. If the radius ratio is 0.73 to 1, is going to be coordination number is 8, and cubic void will be occupied by the cation. So cesium chloride is the best example for that. If it is 1, then it is going to be either HCP or CCP packing. Coordination number will be 12. So all metals elements will crystallize in, most of the metals crystallize in either HCP or CCP arrangement. Simple structure of ionic solids. This is called as rock salt structure or NaCl structure. We can see very clearly FCC unit cell of Na plus ions and FCC unit cell of Cl minus ions are interpenetrated up to half a distance. Then we get the entire crystal lattice. So each sodium ion is surrounded by 6 chloride ion, and each chloride ion is surrounded by 6 sodium ion. So you can see this. If I take this sodium, you have 1, you have 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So these are the chloride ions attached to the central sodium ion. Like that, in 3 dimension it will repeat. So each chloride is also surrounded by 3 more. If I take the corner chloride here, so this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. So 3 in this unit cell. I can write one more here, I can write one more here, I can write one more here. So this is 4, 5, 6. So each of the chloride also will have 6. That's why coordination number ratio will be 6:6. Zinc blende, ZnS. So here the structure is sulfide ion will form CCP or FCC, and alternate tetrahedral voids are occupied by zinc. So the green one, what we see is zinc. You can see tetrahedral void, this green one. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. So each zinc is attached to 4 sulfide ion, and in turn each sulfide ion is also attached to 4 zinc ion. If I take this sulfide ion, this is 1 and this is 2, 2 are in the other unit cell. So the coordination number ratio is going to be 4:4. Similar structure is also there for zinc sulfide, one more form, it's called as woodside. The only difference is instead of CCP, here it is HCP, hexagonal close packing. So you can see hexagonal close packing, and zinc ion is in the alternate tetrahedral voids. So here also coordination number is also again 4:4. Fluoride structure. So calcium fluoride. So here calcium ion will form the CCP. Fluoride ion is going to be in all tetrahedral. Fluoride ion is the smaller anion. As a result, it can take the void position. Calcium is relatively bigger cation. So each calcium is surrounded by 8 F minus, and each F minus is surrounded by 4 calcium. So that's why the radius ratio of calcium to fluorine is 4:8. Opposite to this is anti-fluoride structure. So lithium oxide. So lithium will be occupying the void places, that is tetrahedral voids, and oxygen forms the basic CCP lattice, and coordination number ratio for Li to oxygen is each Li is surrounded by 4 and each oxygen is surrounded by 8 Li ions. So oxygen to Li ratio is 8:4. These are some of the ionic crystals. Now moving to crystal defects. These are the crystals are formed. Crystals are known to have perfect 3D pattern, but still there will be some defects. The defects can be classified into two categories. One is called as stoichiometric defect. Under that we have Scotty defect and Frenkel defect. Non-stoichiometric defect we have metal excess and metal deficiency defect. Scotty defect is a case where equal number of cation and anions are missing from the lattice points, and this defect will lead to decrease in the density of the crystal, and this defect is usually observed in compounds with higher coordination number. So coordination number 6, coordination number 8, the defect is quite common. Next is Frenkel defect. In Frenkel defect, the cation will leave its normal lattice position and occupy an interstitial site. So it is called as an interstitial defect. So intermediate position, not a lattice point. It is a small space between two anions. That interstitial position will be taken by the cation. So no change in the density of the crystal, but this particular defect is common in crystals with low coordination number because the cation has to occupy the interstitial position. Metal excess defect. In case of metal excess defect, the anions will be missing from the lattice points. If anions are missing, the charge is balanced by the electrons present in these lattice positions. So presence of electrons in lattice position, they are called as F center. F stands for Farb, meaning color. So presence of F centers will alter the color of the crystal. So one more way of getting metal excess defect is extra metal ions are trapped in the interstitial position. To balance for the charge, some electrons are also found in the interstitial position. So there's another way of getting metal excess defect. The other one is metal deficiency defect. In this defect, now cations are missing in the lattice points. So cations are missing, anions are seen. To maintain the electrical neutrality, somewhere else another cation is missing and replaced with another cation with higher charge. Okay, that is one way of getting metal deficiency defect. And extra electrons are trapped in the interstitial sites. To maintain electrical neutrality, again the cations are replaced by another cation with higher charge or higher valency. This is the type of two stoichiometric and non-stoichiometric defects. The two of them are stoichiometric, that's Scotty and Frenkel, and metal excess, metal deficiency are non-stoichiometric defects. So these are the synopsis points of two chapters. This is solutions and solid state. So we'll take some typical examples on both the chapters. So first question, two liquids X and Y forms an ideal solution. Two liquids X and Y form an ideal solution. At 300 Kelvin, the vapor pressure of solution containing 1 mole of X and 3 moles of Y is 550 millimeters. At the same temperature, if 1 more mole of Y is added, the vapor pressure is increased by another 10 mm of mercury. So what is the vapor pressure of the pure components X and Y? So we'll go to the solution. So initially we have 1 mole of X and 3 moles of Y. So the mole fraction of X is 1 by 4, mole fraction of Y is 3 by 4. So the equation is P naught A, P naught X into X of X plus P naught Y into X of Y is equal to P total. So P naught X I don't know. This is 1 by 4 plus P naught Y I don't know. This is 3 by 4 is equal to 550. So multiply by 4 throughout, I get P naught X plus 3 P naught Y is equal to 2200. This is equation 1. Same way, second equation, when you add 1 more mole of Y, total number of moles become 5. So mole fractions now 1 by 5 and 4 by 5. So P naught X into 1 by 5 plus P naught Y into 4 by 5 is equal to 560, it is increased by another 10. So if you multiply by 5 throughout, so P naught x plus 4 P naught y is equal to 2800. Now two equations we have to solve the simultaneous equation. I'll take the next slide. So the two equations were P naught x plus 3 P naught y is equal to 2200. Then P naught x plus 4 P naught y is equal to 2800. If I subtract the first one from the second, so I'll make it as minus, minus, minus. So this get cancelled. P naught y is equal to 2800 minus 2200, it will be 600. If I substitute that in any one of the equation, so P naught x plus 3 into 600 is equal to 2200. So P naught x is equal to 2200 minus 1800 is equal to 400. So P naught x is 400, P naught y is 600. We'll go to the solution, the options. So P naught x is 400, P naught y is 600, option should be B. Example 2. The molar volume of X, which is a liquid having density 0.9 gram per cc, increases by a factor of 3000 as it vaporizes at 300 Kelvin. Then same way another Y, liquid Y, having density 0.88 gram per cc, the volume increases by a factor of 8000 when it vaporizes at 300 Kelvin. A measurable liquid solution formed from A and B will have a vapor pressure of 50 torr. What is the mole fraction of Y in the solution? So molecular mass are given 75 and 88. So we'll first find out vapor pressures of the pure component. So what is given in the problem? We have liquid for X. If I take density is equal to 0.9 gram per cc and molecular mass is given as 75. So what is 1 mole? 1 mole is equal to 75 grams, which is nothing but 75 by 0.9 cc. So that comes to 83.3 cc. This is the volume of the liquid X. So when you vaporize it, the volume is increased by 3000 times. So volume of vapor X is equal to 83.3 into 3000 cc. If I want to convert it to liter, I have to divide by 1000. So it becomes 83.3 into 3 liters. So I know PV is equal to nRT. So P is equal to P naught X is equal to nRT by V. N is 1 mole, R is 0.082, T is 300 and the volume is 83.3 into 3. Since you get it in atmosphere, if you multiply by 760, I get it in millimeters of mercury. So if you simplify that, P naught X will be coming up to 74.9 mm. This is the first part, 74.9 mm. Same way we have to find for Y also. So if I take Y, density is 0.88 gram per cc and molecular mass is 88. So 1 mole again is equal to 88 grams, which is equal to 88 by 0.88 means 100 cc. So the volume of Y increased by 8000 times. So 100 into 8000 divided by 1000. So these three get cancelled. So it becomes 800 liters. So substitute that. P is equal to nRT by V is equal to 1.082 into 300 divided by 800 into 760. So this comes to 23.4 millimeter. So I get the pure vapor pressures of X and Y. Once I get it, it's the same calculation. So we have a mixture of A and B. Total vapor pressure is given as 50. So we know that P naught X mole fraction X plus P naught Y mole fraction Y is equal to P total. Since I don't know one, they're asking only for mole fraction of Y, I can calculate X in terms of XY. So P naught X into 1 minus XY plus P naught of XY is equal to P total. So P naught X is 74.9 into 1 minus XY plus 23.4 into XY is equal to 50. So if you substitute and simplify, you get mole fraction of Y is equal to 0.48. 0.48. Okay, so this is the answer, expected answer 0.48. We'll see the options. So option A is the answer, which is 0.48. Example 3. Equal volume of 1 molar KCl and 1 molar AgNO3 are mixed. The depression in freezing point of the resultant solution will be. So Kf is given as 1.86. So we'll go to solution. We have 1 molar KCl and 1 molar AgNO3. So it gives AgCl, which get precipitated almost completely, and I get KNO3. So KNO3 will be 1 mole. So if I take 1 liter 1 mole, the number of moles of K plus, the concentration of K plus is equal to 1. Since you are mixing equal volume, so volume gets double. So it is going to be 2.5 each. So the concentration is reduced by half. So same way NO3 minus also 1 by 2.5. But since these are particles, the total concentration is 1 molar. So assuming 1 molar is equal to 1 molar, delta TB is equal to Kf into concentration. So Kf is 1.86 into 1. So delta T is equal to 1.86 Kelvin. So we'll see the option. So 1.86 Kelvin, that is answer B. Example 4. 0.5 molar solution of ethylene glycol is used as an antifreeze in the car. If Kf of water is 1.86, what temperature the mixture will freeze? So simple problem. So molarity is given, Kf is given, get delta T. So delta T is equal to Kf into molarity. Kf is 1.86, molarity of ethylene glycol is 0.5. So it's going to be 0.93 Kelvin. This is delta T, but they are asking for freezing point. So Tf will be 0 degree minus 0.93 degree. So at minus 0.93 degree Celsius. That is the freezing point of the solution. So answer should be B. Example 5. 25 ml of aqueous solution of KCl was found to require 20 cc of 1 molar AgNO3 when titrated using K2CrO4 indicator. The depression in the freezing point of the KCl solution assuming 100% dissociation is, Kf is given as 10 by 9. So first data is given to find out the concentration of KCl. So we know 25 cc required, 20 cc 1 molar. We'll go to solution. So we know V1 N1 is equal to V2 N2, or it's a molarity, equality, normality are same for this. So 25 into M is equal to 20 into 1. So M becomes equal to 20 by 25, which is equal to 0.8 molar. So 0.8 molar is given. So delta T is equal to, it is KCl, I will come I into Kf into M. Assuming 100% dissociation means I is equal to 2, KCl 2 particles. So I is equal to N if 100% dissociation. So I is 2, Kf is 1.86 and 1.86 is given, and given value here is 10 by 9 in terms of fraction they have given 10 by 9 into M is 0.8. So 0.8 into 10 is 8, 8 into 2 16, 16 by 9. So if you take the options is given in terms of 45 in the denominator, multiply by 5, this is equal to 80 by 45. So solution is this, answer for the question B, 80 by 45. Example 6. What is the correct order of boiling points of 0.1 molar solution of the following electrolytes? We have acetic acid, NaCl, formic acid and sodium sulfate. So we'll take the solution. So acetic acid and formic acid, these are weak acids or weak electrolytes. So they do not dissociate completely, so the number of particles will be less. On the other hand, NaCl and Na2SO4 complete dissociated, so it will give 3 particles per mole per molecule, and this will give 2 particles, this will give 3 particles. So among NaCl and Na2SO4, Na2SO4 will have a higher boiling point than NaCl. Among acetic acid and formic acid, the Ka value of acetic acid, as we know, it is 1.8 into 10 power minus 5, and formic acid 1.75 10 power minus 4. So K is more for formic acid, means dissociation is more for formic acid. So number of particle in formic acid is relatively more than acetic acid. So formic acid will have more boiling point than acetic acid. So number of particles are more, elevation in boiling point is higher, so it's going to be having higher boiling point. So the option should be, so formic acid is the least, then NaCl, sorry, this is not correct, acetic acid is the least, which is lesser in dissociation compared to formic acid. So formic acid comes next, NaCl and Na2SO4 should be highest. So Na2SO4 highest is here, and here A is not correct because NaCl is given less than acetic acid. So option should be C. Next question. 1 mole of CONH35Cl2Br gives 2 moles of Kurdi white precipitate when treated with silver nitrate solution. Which the following statement is correct? So when it is giving 2 moles of Kurdi white precipitate, means it is going to be AgCl, means both chlorine atoms are outside the coordination sphere. So the complex should be, CO NH35 Br and Cl2, which can ionize to give CO NH3 5 Br 2 plus and 2 Cl minus. So N will be equal to 3. So we'll go to the options and see what exactly is given. So if I go back to the question, the compound may be CONH3 5 BrCl2. This is correct. Van 't Hoff factor I is 3 when alpha is equal to 1. So we just now solved n is equal to 3. When alpha is equal to 1, I is equal to n. So this is also correct. The boiling point of 1 molar solution of the complex is thrice the boiling point of the complex when if it is not an electrolyte. So delta T is triple, but boiling point is not triple, because delta T is triple, boiling point is 100 plus 3 delta T. So aqueous solution, the boiling point is 373 Kelvin, the delta T is more but not boiling point. Boiling point cannot be tripled, only elevation boiling point can be tripled. So this is not a correct statement. Osmotic pressure of 1 molar solution is thrice the osmotic pressure if it was not an electrolyte. This is correct because osmotic pressure is a qualitative property. So osmotic pressure will be triple when the complex was not an electrolyte and taken as an electrolyte. So for these two situations, osmotic pressure will be thrice the value. So option C is incorrect compared to all statements. So answer should be C. Example 8. Dry air is slowly passed through 3 solutions of different concentration, that is C1, C2 and C3, each containing solution of NaCl. If the container 2 gains weight and container 3 loses weight, then what we can conclude? So we know in case of the experimental determination of relative lowering of vapor pressure, if you pass dry air through series of bulbs, let us say 1, this is a 2, this is a 3, say C1, C2, C3. So you are passing air through this, again continuously through this, again continuously through this and going out. So it is observed. So first dry air, so dry air has to pick up the moisture from the container C1. So there will be loss in weight. And C2 it has given gain in weight. And again here loss in weight. See, air which is going out of C1 is already saturated vapor pressures of C1. But when it comes to C2, since it is gaining weight, means the vapor pressure of the C2 solution is less compared to vapor pressure of C1 solution. So if vapor pressure of C2 is less compared to vapor pressure of C1, concentration of C2 should be more than concentration of C1. If you add more and more non-volatile solute, there will be decrease in the vapor pressure. So C2 is greater than C1. That is the answer for this particular question. So you can see C2 greater than C1, option B is right. And C3 is less than C2, definitely, but I don't have that option. And C1 and C3 I cannot comment because the relation is not clear. So option only C1 is greater than, C1 is less than C2. Example 9. 5.25% aqueous solution of A is isotonic with 1.5% solution of urea, and if density is both solution taken to be 1 gram per cc, what is the molecular mass of A? So it is isotonic solution. So isotonic means osmotic pressure should be same. So I can write pi 1 is equal to pi 2, or I can write C R T, C1 RT is equal to C2 RT. RT is constant, get cancelled. I can write C1 is equal to C2. Since it is percentage, so mass by volume. So N by, since it is 100 cc of volume, so N1 by 100 is equal to N2 by 100. So what is N1? So N1 is mass by molecular mass of 5.25 grams by molecular mass M by 100 is equal to 1.5%. 1.5 in 60, that is number of moles. Percent means 100 ml is the volume of solution. This 100 also get cancelled. So M is equal to, so if I take 5.25 into 60 divided by 1.5. So 1.5 60 means 40 times. 40 into 5.25 becomes 210. So M atomic mass or molecular mass of the substance will be 210. So answer is B, that is 210. Example 10. The osmotic pressure of urea solution is 56.6 millimeter of mercury at a temperature 10 degrees Celsius. The solution is diluted and temperature is raised to 40 degrees Celsius. The osmotic pressure is found to be 31.3 millimeters. What is the extent of dilution? Okay, so we're increasing the temperature to 40 degree and diluting the solution. So we need to find out what is the volume relations. We'll go to solution. So we know pi is equal to CRT. So R is constant. So I can write pi 1 by C1 T1 is equal to pi 2 by C2 T2. So pi 1 is 56.6. C1 I'll keep as it is. T1 is 283 is equal to pi 2 is 31.3. C2 will keep as it is. It's going to be 313. So if you simplify, I'll get C1 by C2 is equal to 2, or C1 is equal to 2C2. That means concentration of initial is double the concentration of the final, means volume is double in the second stage compared to first stage. So I can write V2 is equal to 2 times V1. So the volume is doubled. The dilution is by half. The concentration is reduced by half. So answer should be V final is equal to 2V initial, answer B. Example 11. The salt AB3 and sucrose solution both are at 0.1 molar concentration, has osmotic pressure of 0.72 and 0.24 respectively at the same temperature, which is not given. The fraction of AB3 dissociated will be, AB3 is an electrolyte which is undergoing dissociation. So I have to take the temperature as constant and I have to get the two osmotic pressure values and find the I value. So we'll go to solution. So we have AB3 as one salt and sucrose as another substance. So both are at 0.1 molar. This also 0.1 molar. And pi here is 0.72 and pi here is 0.24. So I can write here pi is equal to, pi 1 is equal to I into CRT. Here pi 2 is equal to just CRT. Okay. So what I can do now, pi 1 by pi 2 is equal to CRT, CRT. C is also same, R also same, T also same. So it's going to be basically ICRT by CRT. So it get cancelled. So I is equal to 0.72 by 0.24, which is equal to 3. If I is 3, what is N value? AB3 means N is 4. Okay. So AB3 gives A3 plus 3B minus. So n is equal to 4. So alpha is equal to I minus 1 by n minus 1. So I is 3, 3 minus 1 by 4 minus 1. 3 minus 1 is 2, 4 minus 1 is 3. So it's going to be 0.666 recurring. So alpha is 0.67 or 0.666. So we'll go to the options. Option should be C, 0.67. Example 12. An element X, atomic mass 24, has FCC lattice. If the edge length of the unit cell is 4 into 10 power minus 8 centimeter and the observed density is 2.4 10 power 3 gram per kg per meter cube, the percentage occupancy of lattice points by the element X. So Na is given as 6 into 10 power 23. We'll go to the solution part. So A is given as 4 into 10 power minus 8 centimeter, and density, observed density is given 2.4 10 power 3 kg per meter cube, which is same as 2.4 gram per cc. Now density I have to find out the theoretical density. Density is equal to Z into m divided by Na into A cube. So Z is 4 FCC, atomic mass is 24 given, divided by 6 into 10 power 23. A cube is 4 into 10 power minus 8 whole cube. So this, if you simplify, I'll get this as 2.5 gram per cc. So the calculated density is 2.5, actual density is 2.4. It is less because of some of the particles are not in their lattice points. So Schottky effect is there. As a result, I need to find out how much is occupied. So occupied is 2.4 gram per cc, proportional to that, and entire particles without any particle missing, the density should have been 2.5. So if I take the percentage occupancy, is equal to 2.4 by 2.5 into 100. So this comes to 96%. So answer should be 96. Option A. Example 13. A crystalline compound X, Y made of X and Y and Z. Atoms of X takes the FCC lattice, Y occupies tetrahedral voids and Z atoms occupy Y occupies octahedral voids and Z will take tetrahedral voids. So what is simplest formula of the solid if all atoms along one body diagonal are removed? Okay. So first we'll find out what is the formula without anything being removed. So we have three elements, X, Y and Z. So this is in CCP. So FCC, both are same. So number of particles is 4. This occupies octahedral voids. Octahedral voids means 4 particles per unit cell. This is tetrahedral voids, means 8 particles per unit cell. Now if I take the unit cell structure, so the octahedral voids are here. 1 octahedral voids. This is the corner particle. This is the particle. These are X, what I am writing. So these are X. The octahedral voids, that is Z, I am writing here now. All edge centers. This is X again. So like an SEL structure, you have this. The each of the 8 unit cell, 8 cubes what we are finding, the center of each cube will be tetrahedral voids. So there are 8 such cubes, there will be 8 particles. So if I remove one particle in the entire particles in the body diagonal, so I'll see what exactly comes in body diagonal. So I'll write only one cube now. So this is the body diagonal. So you have one corner particle here, one corner particle that is going out, one octahedral void at the center of the cube, and 2 tetrahedral voids are also removed. This is tetrahedral voids, this is octahedral void, this is a corner particle. So this is X, this is Y, and this is Z. So 2 corner particles are removed and 2 tetrahedral voids particles are removed and 1 octahedral void is removed. So if I remove like that, what is X now? X will be, out of 8, 6 will be remaining, 6 into 1 by 8, but phase center will not be disturbed, 3 into 6 into half. So 6 by 8, that is 3 by 4 plus 3. So it's going to be 3, 4 3 is at 12, 15 by 4. X contribution is 15 by 4. If I take Y out of 4 octahedral particles, one is completely in the body center, it is removed. So Y is 3. And Z out of 8, 2 are removed, Z will be 6. So if I take the ratio of 3, so X is to Y is to Z equals 15 by 4 is to 3 is to 6. If you multiply by 4, I get 15 is to 12 is to 24. So divide by 3, 3 5s are 15, 3 4s are 12 and 3 8s are 24. So 5 is to 4 is to 8. So X 5, Y 4 and Z 8. That is the simplest formula of the molecule. Sorry, of the solid. So 5, 4 and 8. So 5, 4 and 8, option A. Example 14. Select the correct statements about FCC lattice. So distance between the nearest octahedral voids and tetrahedral voids is A by 4. So we'll work out that first. 2 nearest octahedral voids, 2 nearest tetrahedral voids, and layer A and layer B. Which is the following correct statements? So I'll write the same solution, same structure what I wrote earlier. This is one phase, second cube, and the third one. So this is the FCC lattice what I am writing, divided into 8 unit cell to locate octahedral and tetrahedral voids. Now octahedral voids is present here. One more octahedral void is in the edge center. So distance between the two, if I take this, it is same as this distance. So this is A, entire length is A. So this is A by 2. This A by 2, even this also A by 2. Or I take this A by 2. So this distance is A by 2 square plus A by 2 square is equal to X square. So 2A squared by 4 is equal to X square. So if I take X is equal to root 2a by 2, or I can write it is a by root 2, a by root 2. So distance between two octahedral voids. Now octahedral void and tetrahedral void. So tetrahedral void is at the center of the small cube. So this distance. So it's half of the body diagonal. So body diagonal is root 3 times of a by 2. Okay. So root 3 times a by 2 is body diagonal, and half of that is the distance by 2. So root 3 a by 4. That is the distance between octahedral and tetrahedral. And two nearest tetrahedral voids. So this is one tetrahedral void, this is another tetrahedral void. The distance is exactly a, because here it is a by 2, here it is a by 2. Sorry, it is a by 2. So total distance is a. So this is also a by 2. So a by 2 for this is for 2. This is for two octahedral voids. This is octahedral and tetrahedral voids, and a by 2 is for two tetrahedral voids. So we'll go through the options. So distance between nearest octahedral and tetrahedral void. Octahedral and tetrahedral void, we got it as root 3a by 4. So it is not correct. Nearest octahedral voids we got as a by root 2, which is also not correct. Nearest tetrahedral voids we got it as a by 2. This also, all three are wrong. Distance between layer A and layer B is going to be 2r into root of 2 by 3. So this is the correct answer. Option D, all three are wrong. Even if I not able to calculate the layer distance, we can go with the options. So one of them has to be wrong. So the correct statements they are asking. So it's going to be A, B. So incorrect statement should have been as, sorry, incorrect statement. Answer is D. Sorry, correct statement only. Incorrect means A, B, C are incorrect, not matching. D is only correct statement. Example 15. An alloy of copper, silver and gold in which copper forms CCP, and if hypothetical formula is Cu4Ag3Au, what are the possible locations of Ag and Au? So copper is forming CCP. The formula is 3 and 1 for gold and silver and gold. So we'll go to solution. So I have Cu Ag Au as 4, 3, 1. So this is CCP. So 4 is fine. Now 3 and 1 are given. What are the possibilities? So this can be in octahedral void, this can be in tetrahedral voids, or vice versa. So there are 8 octahedral voids and 4 tetrahedral voids. So Ag is possible to be there in octahedral voids, means 8, this is 4, this is 8. Tetrahedral should be 8 and octahedral should be 4. So 4 octahedral voids means gold is in 1. So this can be 1 by 4 octahedral voids. That's a possible location. 8 and 3 are there. So 8 by 3. 3 by 8 ones. So 3 by 8, not 8 by 3, 3 by 8 into 8 cancels out and 3 particles will come. So tetrahedral voids, 3 by 8 of tetrahedral voids will be silver, 1 by 4th of octahedral voids will be gold. That is a possible locations. So we'll see the options. So Ag all tetrahedral voids, all octahedral voids is impossible. Ag 3 by 8 of tetrahedral voids and gold 1/4 of octahedral voids is correct. Half tetrahedral voids means half into 4 becomes 2. Au is not there too. This is wrong. All tetrahedral also going to be wrong. So it's only option B which is the correct statement. So 3 by 8 into 8 becomes 3 atoms of silver. 1 by 4 into 4 becomes 1 atom of gold. Example 16. Identify the correct statements from the following. It's a conceptual question. LiCl crystal appear pink because of metal excess defect. So in metal excess defect we have F center. So FOB center, the electrons present in the lattice site, that is responsible for color property. So this is a correct statement. Formation of non-stoichiometric compound can occur because of metal deficiency defect. So metal deficiency and metal excess defects are non-stoichiometric defect which will form non-stoichiometric compound. So it is also going to be right. Impurity defect in silicon obtained by doping arsenic. So when we dope arsenic, it is a pentavalent atom, so it becomes n-type semiconductor. You will be studying that possibly in physics. So n-type semiconductor is formed, so it is going to be introducing what is called as electronic defects. So from pure silicon crystal it is becoming more number of electrons is going to be there, becomes conductivity, semiconducting property will be increased. So the impurity defect in silicon by doping arsenic will be giving electronic defects. And AgBr crystal can show both Schottky and dislocation effect. So Ag plus ion can be found in even dislocation, that is in interstitial position, and also it can show Schottky defect. So Ag plus and Br minus can be missing from the lattice side. So this is a salt which can show both type of defect in case of AgBr. So all 4 statements are appearing to be correct in this. So we'll see the options. Answer A, B, C, D is the correct answer. Okay, so these are some of the questions what I just took for discussion for solutions and solids. Thank you.